Hey guys, welcome back to another haunted story. So, today's story, I do want to put a very heavy disclaimer on this video. It's rough. This story is very violent and can be triggering. So, I just want to put a warning out there that if you have violent triggers or sexual abuse triggers, then I would recommend not watching this video. It's not all about sexual abuse or anything. There's just one mention of it, but I just wanted to put it out there that it's going to be in this video. So if you're uncomfortable with that, then please don't watch this. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable watching my videos ever. So with that being said, today we are talking about the VILLISCA Axe murder house. The house was home to Josiah and Sarah Moore and their 4 children, Herman, Mary, Arthur, and Paul, the oldest being 11. The family was said to be really well liked and they were pretty well known in their community. There wasn't much information about them except that they were well liked, so on June 9th, 1912, their daughter Mary, she was 10 years old, she decided that she wanted to invite 2 of the neighbor girls to come spend the night with her. They were Ina, or Ina, I'm not sure how you say her name, it's either Ina or Ina, and Lena Stillinger. They were sisters. And that same night, the family and the 2 girls decided to go to church. They went to a Presbyterian church, and the kids would do the child program services. So the church service ended at 9:30 p.m., and the family just decided that they would walk back to the house with the 2 neighbor girls, and they got back to the house around 9:45, 10 p.m., somewhere around there. The next day, June 10th at 7 a.m., their neighbor, Mary Peckham, she noticed that the family wasn't out and about in the morning, like doing their morning chores. I guess they had like chickens and animals and stuff, so they would always get up pretty early to let them out, and Mary didn't see them that morning. So being the good neighbor that she was, she decides to go and knock on the door and see if everything's okay, but there's no answer. So then she tries to open the door, which is kind of weird, but still, again, the door was locked. She couldn't get in. So she just decides to take it upon herself to do the morning chores and let their chickens out, I guess. I don't know. I guess that's a good neighbor. I mean, if she's willing to do the morning chores, it's a pretty good neighbor right there. So after she does the chores and lets the chickens out, she still can't find the family or get a hold of the family, so she decides to call Josiah's brother, Ross. And Ross comes over and he tries to knock on the door. He tries yelling for the family, like shouting, "Hey, I'm here," but still no answer. Well, luckily Ross had a spare key, so he just used that to get into the house. So this is where things start to get a little heavy. So he goes into the house and the neighbor ends up staying outside on the porch. She doesn't want to intrude, apparently. And Ross goes into the parlor, and that's where the guest bedroom is. Well, he opens up the guest bedroom door, and that's where he finds the body of the 2 neighborhood girls that came and stayed the night with Mary. He found Ina and Lena's bodies lying on the bed, unresponsive. He immediately yelled to Mary, the neighbor, to call the town sheriff, or the town peace officer is what he's called. His name is Henry. Sadly, when Henry would get there, he would investigate the house and go searching around, and unfortunately, this is where he would find the entire Moore family was bludgeoned to death with an axe, and the axe happened to be Josiah's axe, the dad. So obviously the bodies were taken out of the house and taken to get examined, and doctors would conclude that the murders happened between 12 and 5 a.m. So upon further investigation, investigators would end up finding 2 smoked cigarettes in the attic of the house, and to them that showed that the murderer was up in the attic waiting for the entire family to fall asleep before attacking them. And not only that, but the murderer also covered up all of the mirrors in the house. Like, he didn't want to be seen. He didn't want to see himself doing this awful crime. He didn't want to see himself. He also covered all the windows too. Evidence also showed that the murder started in the master bedroom where Josiah and Sarah slept. And Josiah would seemingly have the most blows with the axe. He was actually hit in the head with the blade part of an axe more than anybody else in the entire house. This is where it gets really touchy. It's awful. It's really sad. I don't even know if I want to say it, but Josiah was hit so much in the face that his eyes were completely gone. They were missing. Nobody knew where his eyes were. That's how bad he got hit with this freaking axe. Makes me sick. Ugh. People are disgusting, dude. Disgusting. And the rest of the Moore family and the two neighbor girls, they were hit with the blunt end of the axe. Everyone else was. I don't know why. It didn't say why, but everyone else was hit with the dull end. Only Josiah got the blade part of the axe. After the murderer killed Josiah and Sarah, this is when he made his way down the stairs. They found bloody drips going down the stairs. This is how they gathered that he moved that way. After he murdered them, that's when he went and killed the children. And get this, the asshole goes back up to the master bedroom and starts hitting Josiah and Sarah more with this freaking axe. Like, he wasn't done. This story pisses me off so bad. Can you guys tell? And then he went back downstairs and went into the guest room where he killed Ina and Lena. It said that the entire Moore family was asleep when they were brutally murdered, but they believe that Lena, the neighborhood girl, she either woke up or she was already awake, but either way, they say that she was awake during this because they found defensive wounds on her arm, so it looked like she was trying to fight back. And the position that she was laying in the bed would conclude that that she was definitely awake. And sadly, I'm going to try and say this in the nicest way I possibly can. I don't know if there is really no nice way of saying this, so I'm just going to say it. Her nightgown was hiked up and she wasn't wearing anything underneath. So investigators believe that the murderer either did or attempted to sexually abuse her. So fucking sad. So here's where it gets even wilder. Over the time of the investigations, there were many possible suspects. I mean, I found 6 possible suspects, but I'm only going to talk about 5. So the first suspect, his name is Andy Sawyer. And there's really no real evidence linking him to the case, but for some reason his name just kept popping up in testimonies. So a man named Thomas Dyer, he was a foreman and a pile driver for the Burlington Railroad. He claimed that Andrew Sawyer approached him and his crew at 6 a.m. the morning of the murders, and he claimed that Andrew was wearing a brown suit, clean shaved, mud all over his shoes, and his pants were wet nearly to his knees. It said that Andrew Sawyer was coming looking for a job, and Thomas Dyer was in desperate need of people, so he hired him, even though he looked like garbage. I don't understand that part, but whatever. Different time. Thomas Dyer would then testify in court that when Andy Sawyer was working for him, I guess they would travel around and travel through different towns and stuff. And I guess Andy ended up buying a newspaper, and on the front page was the murders. And according to Thomas, Andy took the newspaper and went off by himself to go read it and seemed much interested in it. The work crew would say that they felt very uncomfortable around Andy because he would constantly talk about these murders. And not only that, he would sleep with an axe next to him. Could this guy be any more suspicious? I mean, you're sleeping with an axe next to you and you're constantly talking about these murders? Oh, But wait, because there's more. So not only did he sleep with an axe and constantly ask about the murders, but he would also ask the crew if they even found a murderer yet. Like constantly, every single day, this guy was like, have they found a murderer yet? Did they find the murderer? What's going on? Did they find the murderer? So eventually, Thomas Dyer, Andy's boss, would eventually turn him over to police because this guy was just a whack job, right? So he would turn him over to the police on June 18th, 1912, 8 days after the murder happened, because Sawyer ended up telling Thomas that he was in VILLISCA the morning of the murderers. And he would leave town because he was afraid of being a suspect. If you didn't do it, why would you be worried about being a suspect to a murder case? So before the officer arrived, Thomas Dyer would also state that he ended up walking up behind Andy Sawyer one day, and he said that he would hear him talking to himself and saying, "I will cut your goddamn heads off." But not only that, he said that while swinging his axe back and forth, just swinging it everywhere, saying this to himself. If that doesn't say murderer, I don't know what does. But wait, there's more. Thomas Dyer's son, Junior, there's always a junior, right? But he was on the case as well, and he even testified against Andy Sawyer. And he claimed that one day they were traveling through VILLISCA, Iowa, and Andy told him that he knows where the murderer escaped that night. And not only that, but he went into great detail about where the murderer had to have gone. And he told Junior that he would even show him. So they're like on a bus type of thing, you know. And Andy is just pointing out these different like landmarks, you know, like trees and random like manure boxes or a park here and there or whatever. And Andy would tell Junior, so the killer went over this way, he hopped over the manure box, he ran through this muddy field right here, past this tree that's coming up. Like he just went into full detail of how the murderer escaped. Like, what are you doing, dude? Again, if that doesn't shout murderer, I don't know what the hell does. But here's the part that really threw me for a loop, okay? Andy was cleared of all charges of that night. He was completely cleared. He was able to prove that he was in a different town in Iowa and that he was arrested there. So the cops, they call this other town's cops and are like, hey, did you guys arrest a man by such and such name? And the cops were like, yeah, we put him on a train to send him away around 11 p.m. So he was sent away to a different town to either go serve in jail or something. I don't know. There's just not much detail about that. But either way, he was cleared of all charges, which is completely shocking to me. And he was set free. He was let go. There was nothing they could do. They couldn't hold him there. But there was another suspect. And his name was Reverend George Kelly. A reverend. He was an English traveling minister, and he was in town the night of the murders. And people would say that he was acting really peculiar, and apparently he suffered a mental breakdown. This man was accused of nasty stuff. Okay, nasty, nasty stuff. He was known as a peeping Tom, ew, and it was often said that he would try to get young girls and young women to pose naked for him in photos. So get this. So June 8th, 1912, Reverend Kelly was teaching at the Children's Day services at the same church that the Morphe family went to. The same services that the kids would attend, he was also teaching there. On June 10th, he actually ended up leaving town between 5 a.m. and 5:30, hours before the bodies were found. But he confessed to killing the family. He confessed to the entire crime. But the jury didn't believe him at all. Nobody believed him because he had mental problems, apparently. I mean, obviously, if you're doing the things you're doing, it's disgusting, but nobody believed him, which is insane to me. You have someone that's confessing and you're just gonna brush it off. So in the following weeks of the investigations and the court cases and all that, Kelly seemed to be very fascinated with the case. He would constantly write letters to the police officers, to the family, to investigators, constantly asking about this freaking murder. So a private investigator decides, you know what, I'm gonna write this guy a letter back and see what he has to say. So in the letter, he asked him for details about the murder. And this is where Kelly would respond to him with lots of details about the murder and claim to even hear sounds. I don't know what that means. And possibly witness the murders. So is he retracting his confession? Like, what is he doing, you know? But nothing ever came of it. Nothing. Nobody believed him. They thought he was just mentally unstable, which, yes, he was. But if somebody's confessing a crime to you, you kind of want to take that just a little bit serious, don't you think? So, fast forward, it's 2 years later. They still don't have a suspect. Reverend Kelly was arrested for sending obscene items through the mail to a lady that was applying to be his secretary. Like, what was he sending her? Ugh. So he was arrested and later was put into a mental hospital because obviously he's not all there. And this is where the cops are like, you know what? Maybe we're onto something. Maybe he really did commit the crimes. I don't know. Let's go find out. Idiots. So in 1917, again, more years later, the cops decide to arrest him for the murders. They end up actually getting another confession out of him, but they were interrogating him for hours, just really, really digging deep. And Reverend Kelly retracted his confession. So he was actually acquitted after 2 separate trials. I don't understand. If you have a confession from somebody, why can they take it back? I don't understand that. Why are they allowed to be like, oh yeah, I didn't mean it, I was just making it up? First off, who would even make up murdering somebody? I mean, I guess if you're mentally ill, I guess. But why? I don't freaking get it. So Reverend Kelly is out. Andy Sawyer is out. And now we have another suspect by the name of Frank Jones. Frank was an Iowa state senator, so he had some power. And it said that Josiah actually worked for him at his store. Well, eventually Josiah would open up his own store, and Frank claimed that Josiah stole business from him. And he was like really pissed off about this. Not only that, but it was also rumored that Josiah had an affair with Frank Jones's daughter-in-law. But again, there's no evidence of that at all. It's just rumor, but I just thought I would put it out there for the sake of the story. And of course, there was no evidence to point Frank to the case. There was nothing. So then we have another suspect. I mean, the list just goes on and on with these suspects. His name was William Mansfield, and it said that he was hired by Frank Jones to murder Josiah. Now, William was said to be a serial killer already. He apparently killed his wife, his infant child, and his in-laws. What a sick man. So not only that, but he murdered his family with an axe 2 years before the VILLISCA axe murders. He was also the suspect in another murder case, and this murder case happened to involve an axe. And they seem to all be done in the same manner, the same type of way. So of course William was placed under arrest, but where he worked, the payroll records, I guess, showed that he wasn't even in town at that time. So he's also a bust. Our last suspect, I know this video is so long and kind of confusing, but it's important, okay? So our last suspect is Sam Moyer. Sam Moyer was Josiah's brother-in-law. And it was said that he would often tell Josiah and threaten him that he was going to kill him. But of course, with further investigation, he had an alibi and it ended up clearing him from all charges. So here's the really messed up part. This case went completely cold. They have no idea who committed these murders. They have nobody in custody. All of their suspects seem to have alibis and all kinds of crap. So this case is unsolved. They have no idea. None. Zero. Can you believe that? Like, they had so many people in custody. So many people. And all of them were all suspicious. All of them. Alibis or not, I don't care. Like, come on. All freaking suspicious. And they're just gonna brush it off like it's nothing. Dig deeper. Anyways, so the house was lived in throughout the years by lots of families, but none of them ever stayed very long. Two sisters that used to live in the house had reported that they used to hear little girls crying all the time. And I mean, here's my theory on that. The two little girls that were murdered in the house that were sisters, I believe they were reaching out to the two sisters that were living there years later to get some help or something. That's what I think. But they used to hear the two little girls crying, and they would tell their parents about this, but their parents wouldn't believe them. They thought that they were just making it up. The girls said that their father used to sharpen his own knives, and one day he was sharpening his knife, and he was sharpening it away from himself, like one does, I guess. And he said that he felt this overwhelming pressure on his hand, and he ended up stabbing himself in the hand with his knife. And the girls now, they don't even want to go back in that house at all. Ghost hunters interviewed them, and one of the sisters was like having a full-on panic attack. Like, she did not want to be in that house at all. I mean, I don't blame her. That's freaking terrifying. But that's not where the creepy stuff ends. This part really freaked me out. I don't mean to smile, but it's just like, ugh. In 2014, a man was staying there at the house, and he was ghost hunting, and he had his crew with him. And it said that he was alone in the house investigating while the rest of the crew was outside. And they had walkie-talkies, you know, two-way radios. The crew said that they heard him on the walkie-talkie yelling for help, that he needed help. So the crew obviously goes into the house and they look for him. Well, they found him with a self-inflicted stab wound. And not only that, it happened around 12:45 a.m., which is said to be the time that Josiah and Sarah were approximately murdered. So here's what's freaking to me about it. I'm getting cozy. Here's what's freaking to me is this guy ends up stabbing himself. Well, the two girls that lived there before, they said that their dad stabbed themselves. So is it the killer and he's just like pissed off and still trying to kill people? What's going on? People that have visited the house have also said that they see a change in appearance in the upstairs bedroom. I don't really know what that means. They say they see it at night, but does that mean like they see the room one way in the daytime and then when they're investigating at night it's like totally shifted into a different room? I don't really know what that means. But either way, it's still kind of strange. There's been lots of pictures and videos taken there, and most of the pictures come out with orbs or light trails following behind the orbs. Now, orbs to me are kind of a hit and miss because orbs can be all kinds of things. They can be dust, they can be bugs, they can be anything. But if there's a light trail behind it, that's a little odd. Investigators that have stayed there have also reported seeing a light fog filling up the master bedroom where Sarah and Josiah were murdered. And they'll go to like follow it, and they say that it moves from room to room in the order the family and the two girls were murdered. What? But not only that, when the light disappears, it's followed by the sound of dripping blood on the floor. Like I said before, the investigators, when the murders happened, they followed the tracks of the murderer because they found the dripping blood spots on the floor. So if people are reporting hearing dripping blood, that kind of makes sense. There's also tons of EVPs out there of children talking. I listened to so many of them. You would not even believe it. So many EVPs. One EVP was taken in the children's bedroom, and you can hear one of the children saying, "He's gonna hurt us," followed by another child's voice saying, "Paul." Now, Paul was the youngest. He was only 5 years old. So sad. Another investigator was doing an EVP there, and she was standing outside the children's bedrooms in the hallway, like around that area, and she asked one of the children, "Hey, sweetie, can you close that door?" And in response, she got a child's voice saying, "Do it again. Lena, you do it." A voice of a man has been captured on audio as well, and he seemingly hates children, I guess, just by some of the things that they said he has said or the way he reacts. Also, one last final bit, when Ghost Hunters was there, they had one of those boxes. I cannot for the life of me think of the name for it. I forget what the name is called, but they had one of those boxes, and basically what it does is it has radio frequencies on it going at like a really high speed, and then the spirits use the energy to speak into it. Ghost Hunters had asked, "Who is the murderer?" And it responded with the name of Andy. Now, who was one of our suspects? Andy freaking Sawyer. Again, like I said, if that's not a killer, then who is? Here's my theory and my final thoughts on this whole thing. I think there were two killers. I think it was Andy and Reverend Kelly. I think Andy was part of it because he just knew too much about the murder and how he would have escaped that night. The fact that he slept with an axe next to him, and just the way he was so paranoid if they had found a killer or not. Just his whole demeanor about this whole thing makes me think that he was one of the killers. I think Reverend Kelly was also a murderer because of the fact that he was in town that night. He was teaching at the family's church, so he obviously got to know them. He was a freaking pervert, and in the beginning, like I said, Lena may or may not have been sexually abused. And Reverend Kelly liked to have young girls send him nude photos and pose nude for him. So those two people, it just kind of adds up to me. It just goes hand in hand. You have a pervert who would do that to Lena and who knew the family. And then you have Andy, who's a psychopath and probably just wanted to get his rocks off by killing an entire freaking family. I don't know. That's my theory on it. That's what I think. But this house is still open. You can go and visit it. You can take a tour there. I'm pretty sure you can stay the night there. But after hearing of that person stabbing himself, I don't know if I would want to stay there. I'd probably take a tour, but I probably would never stay the night there. But that is all I have for you guys. That is the story of the VILLISCA Axe murder house. I would love to know your opinions down below and what you think. Also, like, who you think the killer could be or what the motives were. I would love to hear your 2 cents on that. But that is all I have for you guys today. So don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on my socials. Those will be linked down below. All the products that I used today will also be in the description box down below. And as always, I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!